relationship. Harry started out as a car salesman after finishing high school, working on commission at a used car lot in his town. He was a natural at it and became so successful that, after 5 years, he was able to buy the lot and 2 others in the same city. Around this time, he discovered a new interest, one that went beyond selling cars. One of the car lots he purchased had a salesperson named Marilyn Borden. Marilyn was 35, married with 2 children, and her husband Terry worked as a mason. The family did well with his steady income and her occasional sales commissions. Marilyn, though not as smooth as Harry, was good at her job, partly because of her looks. She was tall, with dark hair and a striking figure, and she wasn't afraid to use her charm to close a sale. Whether it was a friendly pat on the arm or a smile, she had a way of making male buyers feel special without crossing any lines. It was something she and her husband often joked about. Harry was immediately drawn to her. Although he had dated several women, none were married, and none held his attention the way Marilyn did. At just 23 years old, Harry wasn't interested in serious relationships. He was handsome, with blonde hair and blue eyes, and had a talent for reading people, a skill honed from growing up with difficult parents and a demanding stepfather. When he took over the lot where Marilyn worked, he watched her closely. He noticed how she handled customers and admired her confidence. During their conversations, he learned about her life, her marriage, her kids, her years of selling cars. That's when Harry decided he wanted more than just a professional relationship. He wasn't out to ruin her life, but he saw breaking through her careful boundaries as a personal challenge. He could sense that Marilyn was a bit restless. She had been selling cars for 8 years and had been married for over a decade. Harry thought she might be open to something new if he approached things the right way. He started by using the same subtle tactics she employed with her customers. He complimented her on her work, her style, and her ability to close a deal. Harry also made it clear that he understood how she used her charm to succeed, letting her know that he noticed more than just her sales numbers. In his mind, the game had begun. He also let her know that he thought she was very attractive and that others couldn't compare to her. Marilyn enjoyed the compliments, and one day she agreed to have lunch with Harry. He took her to a nice Italian restaurant, and they shared a glass of wine. Their lunch lasted almost 2 hours, filled with conversation that wasn't just about work. They sat in a cozy booth, and Harry gently moved closer to Marilyn. She noticed, but didn't mind, letting their sides touch. For about 2 months, Harry had been building a connection with her, sharing stories about his life openly. His honesty made Marilyn feel comfortable, and she began to share about her own life, including her children and her husband. She hinted at some of her unhappiness without directly criticizing Terry, but Harry sensed that she felt somewhat bored with her relationship. As their lunch came to a close, Harry wrapped his arm around Marilyn and kissed her softly on the lips. She was surprised but felt a rush of excitement. After a moment of hesitation, she kissed him back, but then quickly pulled away, shocked by what had just happened. Harry reassured her and they left to return to work. The next day, Harry brought up the kiss again and asked Marilyn if she wanted to be closer. She felt a bit flustered but didn't refuse. A week later, they found themselves at a local motel during lunch. Harry was attentive, and Marilyn soon felt her guilt fade as she enjoyed their time together. Harry was unlike anyone she had been with before, and their connection deepened. The affair lasted about 6 months, moving from motels to Harry's apartment. Eventually, Terry found out. One of his co-workers saw Marilyn leaving Harry's building and asked about it. Terry had noticed some strange behavior, particularly on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and he followed her during lunch breaks. After that, their marriage started to crumble slowly. Terry decided to divorce Marilyn, and Harry began to distance himself. Still, Harry was drawn to relationships with married women. His used car business was doing all right, but he couldn't manage everything at once. After a year, he decided to sell the business and move to a nearby city where he sold clothing. There, he met another interesting married woman who worked at a major store he sold to. She was a buyer, and through her, he found success with his sales. Their relationship lasted about 6 months before they both agreed to end it. Her husband never learned about his wife's unfaithfulness, even though she often met with her lover in their shared bed. Harry found excitement in being with her in that special place. Harry started an affair with a woman named Susan at his workplace. Susan worked as an assistant for one of the executives there. Her husband, Manny, was in charge of building luxury homes and renovating older ones. They had 3 children, 2 daughters in high school, and a young son who was 12. For about 6 weeks, Harry tried to win Susan over, taking her to lunch 3 times during that last week. After their 3rd lunch, they spent the afternoon together at a motel. Susan was a tall and attractive woman. Before meeting Harry, she had always managed to turn away the advances of men who were too forward. She had developed ways to do this, from being rude to gently rejecting their offers. So she was surprised when she found herself at the motel, having been with Harry. Her feelings were mixed. She loved Manny, but her time with Harry was thrilling. She also deeply cared for her kids, but that didn't stop her from being with Harry. Their affair lasted a month before Harry's ultimate goal was realized: being with Susan in her husband's bed. It happened on a weekend when Manny had to work a job far away. Susan sent the kids to her mother's house, saying she was tired. She and Harry spent the weekend together, eating snacks and napping. Susan began to feel guilt fade away, but she was caught off guard when Manny returned home just 30 minutes after Harry had left. Manny had learned about Harry. A friend from work had stopped by and seen Harry. Although he didn't say anything at the time, he called Manny. When Manny arrived home, he had just missed Harry, but found Susan just starting to clean up the bed. Manny was very angry. He went to pick up their kids and told Susan to get ready to leave. When he reached Susan's mother's house, she had already warned her mom. Still, her mom simply hugged Manny and allowed him to take the kids. When they returned home, Susan was already gone. Manny was determined to make Harry pay for hurting his family. Soon after that day, Harry used his job benefits and moved to Seattle. Manny couldn't find him afterward. Manny filed for divorce but changed his mind after a few months. He moved back to their family home, but things were never quite the same. Trust was broken, and there wasn't much Susan could do to fix that. Despite everything, they stayed together. In Seattle, Harry found a new job selling high-end cars and quickly became successful. He also met several married women, including some customers and one who was the wife of his boss. Her name was Joan Dillon, and her husband was Steve. Harry was very kind to Joan. At the same time, he got involved with 3 other married women. 2 were customers, and 1 was the wife of a fellow salesman. He was careful and discreet with them, as he was new to this situation. One night, he met his co-worker's wife while her husband was away at a game. After that, he slowed down his efforts with her and focused more on Joan. As the holiday season approached, Harry's interest in Joan grew. At a company party, he danced with her and quietly expressed his feelings. By this time, Joan was eager to be with Harry. They snuck out to one of the fancy cars and shared a moment together. Joan seemed to be falling for him. They met once or twice a week at different places. When Harry learned that Steve would be in Vegas for the weekend, he suggested Joan invite him over. She agreed happily. They spent 2 days together, enjoying each other's company. However, Steve had been suspicious of Joan and had hidden recording devices around their home, including the bedroom. When he listened to the tapes one Sunday night, he was furious. He confronted Joan and asked her to leave, throwing her belongings out as well. When Joan's close friend Helen came to pick her up, Joan called Harry. At that moment, Steve's car zoomed past them. Joan urged Harry to hide, and he managed to escape just in time. Steve arrived at Harry's building, angry and looking for him. The police were called, and Steve was arrested but soon released. Harry watched the arrest from a friend's apartment balcony. Afterward, he quickly packed his belongings, got into his car, and drove away. Steve and Joan ended up divorced. During this time, Harry's relationships with the other married women became public knowledge. 2 of those women remained with their husbands, while the fellow salesman decided to leave his wife. Harry eventually found his way to San Diego. San Diego. Harry loved San Diego for its pleasant weather. He found a job selling used cars again. He had enough money that he thought about retiring, but decided to continue working. After a year in San Diego, he met Faith Drummond and her husband, Mark. Before meeting Faith, he had promised himself to avoid married women due to the trouble it had caused before. However, Faith changed his mind. Faith and Mark had been married for 10 years and had 2 children in elementary school, John and Vera. Faith was a lawyer working on estates and trusts for a large firm, while Mark was an accountant running his own business from home. Mark stayed home more often, so he drove the kids to and from school. They hired a young woman to watch the kids after school, since Mark was usually busy then. Faith was a lovely woman. She was tall with a slim build, had blonde hair and hazel eyes. Mark was shorter than Faith and a bit heavier, with brown hair and brown eyes. Despite his appearance, Mark was fit. He played baseball and worked out at the YMCA, but he had a hidden talent. He was very attentive to details. Harry met Mark and Faith at a charity fundraiser organized by Faith's law firm. Harry was involved with the charity, Homeless Help. He had created a plan to raise funds and build a shelter for people without homes. He was good at raising money. Some of it went to him, but not enough for anyone to notice. Harry was the one who set up the fundraiser with the law firm after pitching the idea to a partner he met. The event was a great success and raised a lot of money. Plus, Harry had the chance to meet Faith. While they danced, he decided he wanted to gain her interest. He wasn't concerned about Mark, and, while polite, he danced with Faith in a way that left her feeling special. By the end of the night, Faith seemed more interested in Harry, and Mark saw it. Harry caught a break when Faith was assigned to help him with the follow-up from the fundraiser. They met at the law office to discuss the money raised and plans for a holiday event. During their meetings, Harry made small compliments and inquired about Mark. Faith mentioned that Mark worked from home and Harry showed little interest. About 3 weeks later, Harry asked Faith out to lunch and she agreed. After spending time together, she began thinking about Harry more often. Later that night, she and Mark shared a good time together. Mark and Faith had what was generally a satisfying relationship. Faith felt happy. However, she was surprised to think more about Harry during her time with Mark. It was a strong feeling that evening, which Mark noticed but didn't comment on. The next day, Faith accepted another lunch invitation from Harry, making it 2 days in a row. That morning, she found herself reflecting on Harry before their meeting and realized she was quite drawn to him. She started to think about her feelings for Harry and what they might mean. She really didn't want to get involved with him or betray Mark. After their lunch together, she decided to take a step back from Harry. Meanwhile, at home, Mark felt uneasy about Faith. To cheer himself up, he decided to visit her at work and take her out for lunch. He arrived around 12:30, just a short drive from their house. He asked the receptionist not to tell Faith he was there because he wanted to surprise her. However, the receptionist informed him that Faith had already gone to lunch with Harry Baxter, and she didn't know where they had gone. Feeling worried, Mark thanked her and left. He didn't see Faith's car in the lot and drove around the nearby restaurants in search of it. After nearly an hour of looking, he spotted her car at a stoplight with Harry inside. Faith had planned to take things slow with Harry. They went to a small Greek restaurant a couple of miles from work. She drove in case she wanted to leave on her own later. As they chatted about the upcoming Christmas event, Faith suddenly noticed that Harry was holding her hand. She wasn't sure how that happened since they were sitting across from each other. Trying to pull away, she felt him hold on tighter, and their conversation paused as they looked at one another. "I really like you," Harry said softly. "We can't have that kind of relationship," Faith replied, yet she didn't remove her hand. She could feel a connection. "I think you like me too. We could make this work without causing problems in your life." "Maybe we could, but that feels too risky. I might be tempted, but I can't go there." Faith met his gaze, looking deep into his blue eyes. "Well, a guy can only try," Harry said with a smile. He signaled the waiter for the check and took out his card when it arrived. He turned to Faith, who was looking down, lost in thought, almost like she might cry. "Faith, I didn't mean to upset you. I just have strong feelings for you." She looked up at him and managed a small smile. "You really know how to tempt someone, Harry. I don't know how we got here." "How far is that? Just holding hands? I guess that's not too far after all. Let's forget what I said and focus on planning the event. I hope I haven't ruined it." "No, we can still do that. Let's head back. I need to get back to work." They drove back to her office. Faith parked in her usual spot and walked Harry to his car. "I'll call you about the venue once I have more details," he said. "Okay." She looked at him as he reached out for a handshake. It felt a bit strange, so she gave him a quick hug and thanked him for lunch. She walked into the office and Harry got into his car and drove away. Harry knew he had made progress with Faith, Mark had followed them and noticed their interaction. It seemed to him that Harry meant to shake hands, but Faith wanted a hug. That made him uneasy. Mark went home. He tried to work, but his thoughts were on Faith and Harry and what he had witnessed. He felt uncomfortable, though he wasn't sure why. He decided to look into Harry. He searched for Harry's name online. There wasn't much, just some articles about Harry selling 3 used car lots. He dug deeper and found Harry's address and phone number, plus one in Seattle and another in Pittsburgh. It looked like Harry moved around a lot. Finally, Mark searched for court cases involving Harry. He found a divorce case from Seattle, Dillon v. Dillon, which gave him Steve Dillon's contact information. Faith felt uneasy after her lunch with Harry. It was as though she were standing on the edge of a cliff, wanting to jump just to feel something exciting. This thought made her determined to keep her distance from Harry. She knew if she got too close, it could lead to trouble. Mark wasn't sure what to do next. He called Steve Dillon, who answered and shared details about Harry's past and some issues from the divorce. Mark also tried to reach out to Manny Borden, but Manny was reluctant to talk about the past. He did caution Mark that Harry was clever and could easily charm people, including Mark's wife. Mark debated whether to confront Faith with what he had learned. If he did, she might think he didn't trust her. Instead, he decided to ask her about Harry later. When Faith got home, they ordered dinner and settled down with drinks and pizza. Mark took the opportunity to ask about her day. "Sorry I missed you earlier. I had lunch with Harry Baxter," Faith replied. Mark inquired, "What's going on with him? Do you see him often?" "Not really. I'm working on the fundraiser and he helped make it successful," she said. Faith noticed that Mark seemed uneasy about her spending time with Harry. She chose not to mention her earlier lunch with him or any other close moments they had shared. "I just don't trust that guy, Faith. He gives me a bad feeling. You should be careful around him." "But Mark, Harry was really helpful. He's basically a good guy, but Faith didn't have to see him much until later in the year when the next fundraiser was coming up." She tried to sound sincere. Mark wasn't convinced. He felt Faith wasn't being completely honest about Harry. "Faith, sure, he might be a nice guy. He might do a lot of good things, but he also has an interest in you. You see that, right? I know he thinks I'm attractive. Just be careful with him. He's not completely harmless. If you spend too much time with him, he might get what he wants. That would be a real shame." Faith looked a bit worried. She was surprised at how well Mark understood Harry. She even felt herself blush, and Mark caught that. "I'll be extra cautious around him. Honestly, I don't really have to see much of him right now." "Okay." Mark ended the conversation, but he was now more alert. That blush said a lot. Harry knew he needed to give Faith some space for a while. He was patient and willing to wait until the right moment to approach her again. He left her a message about a venue for the holiday event, but then didn't reach out for a month. Faith got the hint. She understood both Mark and Harry well enough. She felt a little annoyed, but dove back into work and soon forgot about it all. Life with Mark felt normal again. They enjoyed each other's company, but there were moments when Harry crossed her mind. Mark wasn't lulled by the quiet from Harry. He quietly kept an eye on Harry's activities. Over the next couple of months, Mark learned about Harry's daily routine. It turned out Harry was quite predictable during the week. He would hit the gym early, go to work, and then run in the evening. He took 2 different paths. One went through a park near his home. The other took a longer, more rural route. He only did that longer run every couple of weeks. Mark figured out the first route by running behind Harry. He couldn't keep up with the second, so he slowed down and used his phone for directions. He guessed where Harry would end up and followed him in his car. He was right, and tracked Harry for the last 2 miles on foot again. Later, he pieced together Harry's likely route. On weekends, Harry often had a woman with him. Sometimes it was one on Friday and another on Saturday, and Mark learned the names of a few of these women. 2 of them were married. Mark gathered this information little by little over months, just keeping it in mind for later. As September arrived, Faith knew she had to reach out to Harry again since the fundraiser was set for mid-December at the Hilton Hotel downtown. Faith sent an email to Harry about the event planning and reached out to her boss for some assistance. As a result, William "Billy" Kutchner, a detail-oriented paralegal, was assigned to help her. She arranged a meeting at the law office with Harry and Billy. Faith decided not to tell Mark about it. reasoning that there was no need to stir things up by mentioning Harry again. The meeting went smoothly, and Harry and Billy got along well. They spent 2 hours going over plans. Faith and Billy agreed to manage the venue arrangements, catering, and other logistics. Harry's main role would be promoting the event to companies and organizations. They decided on a holiday event at a hotel ballroom with a dinner followed by a dance. Faith had Billy book a band that would play rock music from the 50s and 60s. By the end of October, everything was progressing nicely. Harry secured commitments from several organizations to buy tickets. He devised a strategy where companies could gain good publicity for their generosity by purchasing enough tickets. He also arranged for radio ads and public service announcements on TV. Just before Halloween, Mark asked Faith about how things were going, especially regarding her work with Harry. They were sitting on the patio after dinner. "Things are going well, Mark," she said. "Harry has really gone above and beyond. The event is already sold out and tickets are in high demand." "And you've been spending more time with Harry?" Mark asked. "A bit more, but Billy Kuchner is helping, and he's been with Harry the most. I know you're concerned about Harry, but so far everything's fine," she assured him. "But you'll need to see him more as the event approaches?" Mark pressed. "Yes, there will be more meetings as we get closer. Harry also has some new ideas for raising money at the event. Just remember what I said before. I don't think you were fully honest with me back then. I'd like you to let me know when you're going to meet with him," Mark said. "Okay, but it feels like you don't trust me," Faith responded. "It's not you I don't trust, it's Harry. And when you're around him, I have my doubts." "Mark, I'll hold all the planning meetings at the office and Billy will be there. No one-on-one time with Harry, no lunches, is that fair?" she asked. "Fair enough," Mark agreed. Faith and Harry hadn't spoken about Harry's earlier confession of his feelings for her. But even with Billy present at the meetings, Harry continued to subtly try to win her over, through small gestures, smiles, and shared jokes. Harry understood why Billy was there and why all the meetings were held at the office. It was a challenge for him, but he knew Faith had set things up that way because she was being careful to keep their relationship professional. Meanwhile, Mark, concerned about the situation, visited a hardware store across town. He bought a few supplies, including a shovel and a large tarp. He put them in the space above the garage. He also bought an old pickup truck with a cover on the back. It wasn't registered, and he paid for it in cash. He didn't register the truck, choosing to park it outside of town, behind a trailer park. He rode his bicycle the 12 miles back home and told Faith he wanted to ride more to get in better shape. It was true. He did plan to bike more often. Mark managed to get a taser from a friend who knew some police officers. He hoped he wouldn't need to use it. Faith and Harry continued planning the charity ball through November. They couldn't do everything from the law office, so they needed to visit the venue, the caterer, and the staffing agency. At first, the three of them worked together on these tasks, but Billy had other responsibilities. Right before Thanksgiving, Faith found herself driving with Harry downtown to the hotel. They were meeting with everyone involved in the ballroom. They needed to finalize decoration plans and decide on a menu. The staffing agency was also sending someone to help figure out how many staff would be needed. The event was scheduled for December 21st, just weeks away. In the past few weeks, Faith had begun to trust Harry more. He was still working to gain her confidence, but she didn't see it that way. She thought he was a true friend. As they drove to the meeting, Harry felt ready to push forward with his plans. "Faith, I really appreciate your hard work on this project. I know you had some doubts about me. I hope I've eased those concerns." "Well, Harry, I still have some worries. I can't pretend otherwise." "That's why you've avoided being alone with me." "I get it, and honestly, it's a bit flattering." "What do you mean, flattering?" Faith asked, realizing what he was implying. "You're not sure you can trust yourself around me. Honestly, I still feel the same way." Faith was quiet and turned away. She found herself drawn to Harry, perhaps even more than before, especially after spending more time together. It made her uneasy. Still, she often thought about him when she was with Mark, and that discomforted her. "Harry, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I won't enter a romantic relationship with you. I won't." "We're here," Harry said as they pulled into the hotel garage. "Let's focus on the meeting." The meeting went smoothly and everything was organized. It lasted for more than 2 hours. When it ended, Harry and Faith were left alone in the room. When Faith realized this, she felt tense and couldn't meet Harry's gaze. "What's wrong, Faith? I thought the meeting went well." "It did." Faith looked at Harry and smiled. "Thanks. How about we grab a quick drink to celebrate?" "No, Harry, you know I can't do that. Mark wouldn't understand. Maybe we can celebrate after the event." "I'll hold you to that, Faith. Come on, let's hurry. Are you heading home or back to your office?" "I think I'll go home. I can't get much more done at the office." Harry dropped Faith off at her office parking lot. He quickly got out of his car to open her door. As she stepped out, they had a little brush against each other. He walked her to her car in the garage. It was after 5:30 and dark outside. Faith pressed the button to unlock her car, and Harry kindly opened the door for her. As she got into the driver's seat, she turned and smiled at him, letting him know it was intentional. Harry smiled back and closed the door, watching as she drove away. Mark was parked across the lot, watching them. He was not pleased. He arrived home just after Faith. He mentioned he had been running errands. He had some graph paper and pencils with him, which she thought nothing of. Mark asked Faith about her day. "We had a big meeting at the hotel to prepare for the ball. It went really well. I think it's going to be a success." "That's great. Who was there?" "We had the hotel staff, caterers, and decorators. It was a good team. There's going to be a raffle to raise more money." "What's the raffle for? What's the prize?" "I'm not sure yet. That's Harry's area." "How's Harry doing? Are you still keeping your distance from him like I asked?" "I have been, but today he drove me to the meeting and back. Sorry, it made more sense to go together. He was very polite. No worries." Mark was a bit annoyed by Faith's words. She seemed a little off, almost like she was hiding something. "Okay, but Faith, I want you to understand that Harry is a very smooth guy, and I don't trust his intentions." "No, Mark, he's been nothing but nice. You're being unreasonable." After dinner, they put the kids to bed. Then Mark went to his study and brought out some papers he had prepared for Faith. It contained information about Harry's past relationships, how they had ended, and how he moved on quickly after. He had gathered proof of everything. He handed it to Faith to read. "Please read this completely before you say anything." Faith read through it. Her face turned red as she realized what it was. It didn't take her long to finish. "My God. I've had my doubts about this guy, Faith, so I looked into his history. You're not the first married woman he's shown interest in, not even close. Who knows how many more there are that we don't know about. Mark, I still have to work with this man, but there is no way I'll ever be interested in him after reading this. Maybe I was a bit curious. He clearly knows how to charm people, but that's it. I'm glad to hear that. Still, please keep your distance from him as much as you can." "Sure. Okay." They went to bed soon after. Mark turned to Faith and gently kissed her shoulder. Faith felt a spark. Mark leaned in closer, and they shared soft kisses. After a while, they embraced each other warmly. They shared a moment of closeness, full of affection and desire. When they finished, Mark fell asleep. Faith stayed awake. She thought about the fact that, despite what she now knew about Harry, her feelings tonight still lingered on him. If anything, knowing he was very charming made her think of him even more. The next morning, Faith felt cheerful as she got ready and headed to work. Mark was in a good mood too, but he started to think about the night before. His talk about Harry seemed to have had an effect on Faith, so why was she still so enthusiastic? Then he realized what had happened. His words had only made her more aware of Harry's charm. Mark felt a little upset with Faith. He worried she might be more willing to let Harry get close to her. Usually, he would question if he was reading her feelings right, but this time, he had no doubts. Mark left the house around noon with some tools. He drove to a spot in the park near Harry's place. He walked into the woods, carrying his equipment. He found a secluded area and dug a deep hole. When he finished, he covered it with branches and placed a red warning pole nearby. He returned to his car and put the tools away in the trunk before driving back home. At work, Faith felt distracted. She realized she was becoming more open to Harry's attention. It was hard for her to ignore her feelings whenever she thought about him. She didn't mind that he was a trickster or a bit odd. In fact, that made things more interesting. One afternoon, Harry called Faith. He wanted to talk about the raffle they were planning. He had decided to give away a new electric car, not a Tesla, though. He had convinced the owner of a Chevy dealership to donate a Volt. The owner agreed because electric cars weren't selling well, and he had too many in stock. Plus, it would look good for him in the community, or so Harry said. When Harry called, Faith greeted him warmly. He could tell something was different about her today. After they discussed the raffle details, Faith asked if she could see the car. "Of course. When do you want to check it out?" he replied. "Maybe tomorrow at lunchtime?" she suggested. "Sounds good. I'll pick you up at noon." Great. Faith was really excited about their lunch meeting. She wondered if Harry would take her to see the car first or go to lunch first. She thought they might eat first. Meanwhile, Harry wondered what had led Faith to invite herself out for lunch. He couldn't be sure, but he thought he should prepare for their relationship to grow. He tidied up his condo, cleaned out the fridge, and vacuumed. As the day went on, Faith started to have doubts about her sudden decision to meet up with Harry. She thought about her family, and she knew Mark was watching for signs that she and Harry were getting closer. The thought of losing Mark made her uneasy. At the same time, the idea of being with Harry made her feel nervous in a different way. As she drove home, she felt conflicted. She parked in the driveway, but sat in the car for a moment, trying to decide how to handle the evening. Mark noticed Faith sitting in the car. He had heard her arrive and looked out the window. The kids were busy playing a video game. He sensed that something was off because she hadn't come inside right away. When she finally got out of the car, he called to the kids that she was home. They rushed from the game room and she hugged them tightly. She asked about their day. John shared that he got a perfect score on his history test, and Vera mentioned she had lunch with her teacher. Faith asked them more questions before sending them back to their game. Mark then asked, "How was your day? I had a pretty good one myself." "It was good. We're going to raffle off a car at the ball. We're getting it for free, a Volt. Harry really knows how to make things happen," she replied. "Well, the Volt hasn't been selling well. Still, I'm sure it will help us raise some money." "Me too. What's for dinner? Did you cook?" she asked. Mark smiled and said, "We're having grilled sausages and a salad. That's why you didn't smell anything good yet. I can cook it right away if you're hungry." "That sounds nice. I am getting hungry." She went upstairs to change. Mark cooked the sausages and some rolls on the grill. At dinner, everyone talked about the kids' upcoming fall soccer finals on Saturday. Both kids' teams had made it to the finals, but they were playing at the same time in different places. It was decided that Faith would take John to his game, while Mark took Vera. Both would record videos of the matches. After the kids were tucked in for the night, Faith sat down with a book. Mark spent some time in his office before coming downstairs. "Are you still seeing Harry? The ball is coming up." Mark had started asking questions like this regularly. "Yes. Tomorrow we're going to look at the Volt and take some photos for a promotion. I hope it's a nice color." Mark frowned. "We? Who's we?" "Harry and I. We need to get those pictures right away for the ad." "Oh, I thought the dealership could email you some photos. Why do you both have to go together?" "Oh, Mark, I think Harry just wants to show off the free car he got for the event. I think Harry just wants to get close to you, and it seems like you're letting him. After I showed you who he really is, your reaction surprised me." When Mark said this, Faith looked down and turned red. He stepped closer and gave her a reassuring hug. "Don't." He lifted her chin, making her look into his eyes. "Just don't. You'll regret it. Both of you will." "Mark, I just have been... I don't know." Faith stumbled over her words, feeling seen in a way she hadn't expected. Anger bubbled up inside her. "Mark, I won't be pushed around by you. I'm not going to get involved with Harry. You're overreacting." "No, I'm not. I'm trying to protect our family. I think you should be doing the same." "Our family is fine." Faith said this with tears in her eyes, trying to pull away, but Mark held her tight. "Don't mess us up, Faith. We're important to each other. Step back from this guy." He gently let her go and walked upstairs to their bathroom to get ready for bed. Faith couldn't believe how complicated things had become. It felt like Mark could read her thoughts, and he wasn't wrong. Their conversation seemed based on the idea that she was okay with getting too close to Harry, and deep down, she knew that might be true. She had thought about spending more time with him, maybe even at his place for lunch. But Mark had stopped that train of thought. Faith understood that if she got too involved with Harry, Mark would somehow pick up on it, and she feared what he might do. She decided to cancel her plans with Harry. She texted him to call it off, then turned off her phone and headed upstairs. Mark was reading in bed when Faith came into the room, ready for sleep. "I canceled the plans with Harry for tomorrow. I'm sorry I even considered it. I won't let him affect me anymore, I promise." "Okay, I'm glad," Mark replied. "I thought I might receive some kind of ultimatum." "No, I would never do that." They snuggled up together, but there was no romance that night. In the days that followed, Mark watched Faith closely. He didn't see any signs that she was seeing anyone else. He figured if she got together with Harry, she wouldn't be able to keep it a secret. She knew that too. Despite believing that Faith was staying away from Harry, Mark drove one afternoon to a hidden spot along Harry's longer route. It was a place not easily seen from the road. Mark walked into a small wooded area and dug another hole like he did before. Faith had been busy working on a new case. She had only touched base with Harry through a few emails. Harry was curious about what was happening between Faith and Mark. He thought that Faith was interested when they had planned a lunch meeting. But something changed when she got home, and she decided not to go. With other women, he usually backed off when things got complicated. He did the same here. The big event was coming up in 2 weeks, and he knew Faith would need to reach out again for things to go smoothly. Faith realized she had to discuss charity matters with Harry soon. Time was passing quickly, and she didn't want any last-minute issues. She called him to talk about decorations, music, and staff arrangements. He explained how the raffle would work, and it was a solid plan which Faith agreed with. Then Harry brought up something important. "Faith, when we were supposed to have lunch a few days ago, I thought things were finally going to connect between us. What happened?" "Harry, I think we should leave this alone. I told you how drawn I am to you. But Mark really notices everything. If anything happened, he would definitely find out. It's like he has a sixth sense." It seems like we would already be together if it weren't for that. I know you want to. You know I want to. Why not just tell Mark how you feel? Because that would hurt our relationship, and I don't think you understand that. Why should it? A woman can care for more than one man. You definitely can. Why should Mark be the only one for you? You could just let him know you want some space." "I can't do that. He would end things right away. If he did, that's his choice. I would let you stay with me. Just imagine what we could do." "No, Harry. I love him and won't hurt him, even if I have feelings for you." "Well, let me know if you change your mind. By the way, where are we with the event staff?" For the rest of the week, Faith and Harry focused only on work. Mark didn't see anything suspicious from Faith. They made plans to have a sitter and attend the charity event. On the Friday before the event, Faith and Harry met at the hotel. They and the hotel staff discussed the details and prepared for the new workers. When they finished, Harry walked her to her car. He took her arm as they walked. When they got to the car, Harry hugged Faith. She was surprised, but didn't pull away. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Faith felt shocked and excited. She kissed him back, and their connection grew. "I'm going to take you to the ball tomorrow. Just remember, no extra layers," Harry said. "Oh, wow," Faith replied, feeling overwhelmed. Harry let her go and walked to his car. Faith sat in the driver's seat, feeling dazed, as she watched him drive off. That evening, Mark noticed that Faith was quiet. He thought it might be nerves about the ball the next day, but sensed something more. When they went to bed, Mark hugged Faith and pulled her close. At first, she hesitated, but then kissed him back passionately. They shared a close moment, and she whispered sweet words to him. Afterwards, they relaxed together, both feeling the spark of what had happened. Mark sensed that Harry had sparked something in Faith again. "That was about Harry, wasn't it? What happened?" he asked softly. "He kissed me. I didn't see it coming. I kissed him back. Then he just walked away," Faith admitted. "Tomorrow is a big day. I want to be with you, and I don't want any issues with Harry. If I see something, I will speak up," Mark warned. "I'll behave, I promise. After the dance, I'll keep my distance from Harry," Faith assured him. "Okay, just be careful. I'll be watching," Mark said. The next morning, they went to work and returned home on time. Both of them then got ready for the charity ball. Mark was dressed and waiting downstairs for Faith. She was doing her hair and makeup, putting on a dress that had a lovely design. The skirt was knee-length and nice enough to twirl when she danced. She matched her heels to her dress. At the last moment, Faith decided to remove her extra layers. She told herself nothing would happen, but deep down she thought about how she might feel if Harry showed up. Mark complimented her on her dress, and they took an Uber to the hotel. The kids were at her parents' house, and Mark had rented a room for the night. He was excited about their own little party after the event. Harry had also booked a room at the hotel. Both rooms were on the 4th floor east side. Harry had plans with a neighbor named Cindy. She was a lovely woman and single. Harry enjoyed their time together. She was fun, and always wanted more time with him. Before they left for the hotel, Harry told Cindy that he planned to end the evening with another woman, if possible. She understood him well and looked forward to an entertaining night, watching him. Faith and Mark arrived at the hotel around 7 o'clock. The place was lively. They entered the ballroom and mixed with some of Faith's co-workers. Mark was looking for Harry Baxter, so he kept his eyes peeled. He got a glass of wine and grabbed one for Faith, too. When he returned from the bar, he saw Harry talking to a beautiful young woman who was with Faith. Mark walked over and said, "Here's your wine, Faith. Hello, Mr. Baxter, how are you?" "I'm doing well, thanks. This lovely young lady is Cindy, my date for tonight." Mark recognized Cindy Mason. She had been spending a lot of time with Harry lately. In fact, he hadn't seen any other women at Harry's place for months, but he only checked in every couple of weeks. "Hi, Cindy, I'm Mark, Faith's husband. These two have worked very hard to make tonight great. It looks like they did well." "Yes, Harry has put in a lot of time for this, maybe too much, but it will help the charity. Has Faith left you to attend to Harry as I have with him?" That question had a lot behind it. Mark wondered if Cindy was serious or joking. Mark chuckled. "I hope not quite left behind. After tonight, I think I will be seeing more of her." Harry chimed in as a gong rang. "I think it's time to take our seats." Faith and Harry led the way to a table for 8 close to the front. They were important guests and got special seating. Clearly, they both knew where to go. There were name tags at the table. Harry sat between Faith and Cindy, while Mark sat on Faith's other side. They settled in, and soon the MC began the program. The waitstaff started serving the guests. Several people from the charity were at the front and were served first. They would eat, hear a few words from the director of homeless help, and then dance to a band. Around 11 o'clock, Harry would announce the award of the evening. Then there might be more dancing. Mark chatted briefly with Faith, then she turned to Harry. They discussed some details of the program, and Harry leaned in to speak closely with her. Mark noticed. Soon after, the waiter brought salads and asked about drinks. They all ordered wine. After the main course was cleared, a seat opened up next to Cindy. Mark got up and moved to sit there. "It seems we're both in a similar situation here, Cindy." Mark looked at Faith and Harry, then back at Cindy. "So, what's really going on between you and Harry?" he asked. Cindy hesitated for a moment before answering. "It's hard to say. I do spend a lot of time with him, maybe 3 or 4 nights a week for the past 6 months. But honestly, I don't think we're meant to be a long-term thing. Harry's not the type to settle down." Mark nodded, considering her words. "You're a smart and beautiful woman. You could have plenty of options. Why stick around if it's not going anywhere?" Cindy blushed slightly. "It's simple. We have a good time together, and Harry's great company." Mark frowned, casting a glance over at Faith, who was deep in conversation with Harry. He didn't say much in response. Cindy noticed his expression and asked, "Have you ever wondered about Harry and Faith? They seem pretty close. Are you in an open marriage, or does it bother you?" Mark's reply was quick. "I'm just concerned." Before Cindy could say anything else, dessert arrived, and Mark moved back to his seat. The band began playing a Buddy Holly song, setting a lively tone for the evening. Mark turned to Faith. "Would you like to dance?" he asked. "Love to," Faith replied with a smile. They made their way to the dance floor, with Harry and Cindy following closely behind. Mark was a skilled dancer, while Faith held her own but seemed to shine more when dancing with him. Together, they started a lively jitterbug. As they danced, Mark glanced at Harry and Cindy. Harry wasn't much of a dancer, but Cindy looked stunning, moving with energy and grace as she spun and smiled throughout the dance. The next song was another upbeat rock and roll tune. Mark and Faith continued dancing while Harry shuffled around the floor and Cindy danced with an effortless rhythm, clearly enjoying herself. When a slower song began, Faith leaned into Mark as they swayed to the music. "Thanks for keeping Cindy company while Harry and I finished up the event details," Faith said softly. Mark smiled. "No problem. She's interesting and has a certain charm." "You like her?" Faith asked playfully. "She and Harry booked a room here for the night. So I guess it's going to be a big night for everyone," Mark replied with a hint of sarcasm. Faith didn't catch his tone and simply nodded. "That's right, a fun night ahead." Mark's thoughts wandered and he grew suspicious of the evening's plans. Deciding to stay sharp, he made up his mind to stop drinking. After the slow dance ended, they all returned to the table. Harry ordered a bottle of champagne, popped the cork, and poured it for everyone. Mark sipped his drink while Faith quickly finished hers, her mood growing more animated. When the next song started, Faith eagerly grabbed Harry's arm. "Come on, Harry, let's dance," she exclaimed. Harry shrugged and followed her back to the dance floor. Mark watched them for a moment before turning to Cindy. "You're a great dancer," he said. "Would you like to dance again?" Cindy smiled. "I'd love to. Harry's good at a lot of things, but dancing isn't one of them." Mark took her hand and led her to the floor. As a fast song played, Mark noticed Harry and Faith dancing closely in a far corner of the floor. He turned back to Cindy, sweeping her into a graceful dip, then twirling her with ease as they danced together. She moved gracefully and didn't falter. The crowd began to clap as the performance came to an end. At that moment, Harry turned to Faith and asked, "Did you follow my suggestion about not wearing them?" "Yes, I did," Faith replied without any shame, feeling excited about being around him. They both heard the audience applauding for their friends. The band started playing an upbeat rock song and Mark and Cindy got closer together. Cindy wrapped her arms around Mark and he did the same in return. Their dance was bold and full of energy. As they danced, Cindy playfully touched Mark's legs, further increasing the excitement. Mark moved around her, pulling her closer and then spinning her back around. It was as if she knew what he was about to do. He felt a rush of surprise and attraction. The crowd cheered, and Harry and Faith joined in. Faith was surprised that Mark would dance with such confidence in front of everyone. She was also amazed at how well he could dance. When the song finished, the audience erupted in applause. Mark and Cindy bowed and went back to their table, with Harry and Faith following behind. Once they sat down, Harry exclaimed, "Wow, you two really took the stage by storm. I thought something might happen right there." "Oh, Harry," Cindy said playfully, "Mark and I just clicked." "I noticed," Faith replied, feeling a bit flushed. She began to think that maybe she could connect with Harry tonight if Mark was interested in Cindy. It was a thought she had for a few days, but she wasn't sure if Mark would feel the same way. Now, it seemed more possible. The four of them finished off the bottle of champagne. Mark hardly drank, but he wondered about the night ahead on the fourth floor, considering if being with Cindy could make things different for everyone. Then the MC called out for Harry. He had an envelope in his pocket and jumped up onto the stage, waving it around. And now for the big moment. The winner of tonight's grand prize, a Chevy Volt donated by Pricer Chevy. He opened the envelope and read out loud, "And the winner is Cheryl Wilson." A loud cheer rose from the crowd as a young woman with blonde hair rushed to the stage. Harry handed her the car key and she hugged him tightly. He held the hug a moment longer than expected before giving her the key. "The car is just outside. Mr. Wright will take you there. Everyone, let's give a big round of applause for Joe Pricer for his generous donation, raising $24,000 for homeless help." Harry jumped off the stage and returned to the table. The band began to play "Don't Be Cruel." Mark reached out his hand to Faith. She hesitated for a moment, but then took it. He took her to the dance floor. They held each other and swayed to the music. "Mark, would you like to spend the night with Cindy?" someone asked. "Yes, that sounds nice, but it's not happening. I think you and Harry planned this," Mark replied. "No, Harry only mentioned it, but seeing you dance with Cindy made it feel real. We could both have fun." The band started playing 16 Candles, and Faith and Mark held each other close. "I couldn't enjoy it, knowing that Harry was with you. I can't accept that," Mark said firmly. She sighed as she cuddled close to him. They finished their dance and then went to say goodnight to Harry and Cindy. Cindy looked a bit let down, but Mark felt even worse, yet he wasn't prepared to risk his marriage for one night. Faith and Mark returned to their room. As they were entering, Harry and Cindy came out of the elevator and passed by. Harry glanced at Faith. "Rain check," he said, not realizing the trouble those words could cause. That night, Faith and Mark shared a peaceful time together, each thinking of others. But it turned out to be a memorable night. They enjoyed breakfast in their room before checking out. The weekend was spent at home with the kids, preparing for Christmas on Monday. On Sunday night, after they settled into bed, Faith mentioned she wanted to discuss something. "Mark, I wish we had switched partners on Friday. I know we had a nice night, but I feel the need for a moment with Harry. It would have felt better without guilt." "Have you heard the saying, 'one and done'?" Mark replied. "But Mark, No more about this. You won't have to see him again. Remember, you said you'd avoid him after tonight, right?" Faith felt let down. She thought Mark was being unfair. After all, he was very interested in Cindy. Why couldn't he understand? She decided to talk to Harry about it. The Tuesday after New Year's, Faith called Harry. "Hi, Harry. I'm sorry Mark was so stubborn at the dance." "Me too. I wanted to speak with you alone, but Mark was always nearby. I thought Cindy would draw his attention, but he wasn't swayed." "What's going on with him?" "He's really focused on being loyal. He believes we shouldn't wander. Maybe he's correct, but I realize you're known for charming married women. Like me. You know that?" "Yes, Mark found out about you and shared everything he could. He even talked about your past." "Then why did you—" "It made me more interested in you. I thought someone with your experience would be amazing. After Mark shared this, I had a strong urge to be close to you. He sensed something was off the next day, which is why he stayed nearby on Friday. Why don't we go for it? I'll book a room and we can meet there after our accounting meeting on Friday. You won't regret it." "I will if Mark discovers it. That's my worry. He notices everything. If I'm with you, I doubt I can keep it a secret from him." "He's not invincible." Faith and Mark were discussing a meeting she had scheduled with Harry for Friday. "If we keep it to just once, he won't suspect anything," Faith said. "Okay, get the room," Mark replied. "But I might change my mind last minute." That night, after putting the kids to bed, Faith hugged Mark. She looked up at him and said, "Mark, I've got one more meeting with Harry on Friday. We're just going over the final numbers and drafting a press release. We won't be alone." "And after that, no more Harry, right?" Mark asked. "No more," Faith reassured him. "After Friday, it's done." Mark wasn't convinced. He had suspicions and decided to investigate further. He worried that something might happen at the Friday meeting. He had already bought a car tracker and a small recording device. After Faith fell asleep, Mark quietly went to the garage and placed the tracker under her car. He also slipped the recorder into her purse and linked their phones to monitor her calls. Then he went back to bed. Faith seemed nervous the next day and Mark noticed it. On Wednesday afternoon, she called Harry from her office. "Harry, I'm having second thoughts. I'm not sure this is a good idea," Faith said. "Don't worry," Harry reassured her. "I've already booked the room and no one will know. We still have that meeting to attend anyway." Faith hesitated. Maybe someone else could handle the meeting instead. "Let's just see how things go after the meeting. Please come," Harry replied. Later that evening, Mark listened to Faith's side of the conversation through the recorder. His doubts deepened. On Thursday, Mark put his plan into motion. In the afternoon, he told Faith he was going out for a bike ride to relieve some stress. He left the house without his phone but carried a backpack. Mark rode his bike to a truck he had parked earlier at a nearby lot. He loaded the bike into the truck and drove to a park where he knew Harry often ran in the evening. It was dark by the time Mark arrived. He backed the truck into a secluded spot and waited with a tarp and some tools. Around 7:25 p.m., Harry appeared, running along the path, unaware of Mark's presence. Harry had his headphones on, oblivious to everything around him. When he passed by, Mark stepped out from his hiding spot, quickly catching up to Harry. Mark took action, quietly subduing Harry and pulling him off the path into the woods. Once he was sure no one was nearby, Mark wrapped Harry in the tarp and carried him back to the truck, making sure no one saw him. He loaded Harry into the truck and drove away unnoticed. It was rarely busy at this place after dark. Mark drove to the spot he had dug a little outside of town. He parked his truck on the gravel road and carried Harry for about 25 yards into the woods. With a flashlight, he found the spot marked for digging. He gently placed Harry's body, still covered in a tarp, into the hole. After that, he filled the hole with the dirt he had removed, covering it completely with some brush. Then he jogged back to his truck. Mark left his pickup at a shopping center a few miles from his home. He left the keys in the ashtray and rode his bike back. When he got home, Faith was a bit upset that he missed dinner. It was just after 9 p.m. Mark apologized and went upstairs to check on the kids before taking a shower and changing into comfortable clothes. Faith looked a bit worried when he came back down. "Are you all right? You looked really tired when you got home. How far did you ride?" "I rode a long way. I stopped at a park to sit for a bit. I was just feeling tense with everything going on. Work is busy and there's been a lot on my mind." "You can relax. I'm sorry if I stressed you." "Yeah, the ride helped clear my mind. Want to watch a movie?" "No, I have a busy day tomorrow. I think I'll read for a bit and head to bed early. You can watch a movie if you'd like." This was Faith's way of saying she wasn't interested in spending more time together that night. But Mark was okay with that. He watched a Western movie before heading to bed. The next morning, Mark got the kids ready for school, while Faith left for work. She wore a business suit but had chosen some nice undergarments just for Harry. She felt anxious throughout the morning and tried calling Harry, but it went to voicemail. Her meeting was at 1 p.m. in a hotel. Harry was late, and Faith was very on edge. She couldn't believe he hadn't arrived. In the end, Harry never showed up. Calls to his cell went unanswered. They had everything ready for the meeting, so they proceeded with their plans and wrote a press release. Homeless Help was receiving $82K to fund a new shelter near the old one. After the meeting, Faith was frustrated with Harry and left some pointed messages for him. She returned home around 4 p.m. Mark noticed she was home early. "I didn't feel like going back after the meeting, so I came home. Harry never showed up, and I can't get him on the phone." "That's odd. I wonder if Cindy knows where he might be." "Could you call her? I just feel a bit awkward about it." "Why's that?" "Oh, it doesn't matter." "No worries, I'll call." Mark had Cindy's number from a previous event. He had made sure to remember it because he might have wanted to talk to her more. "Hello, Mark. It's nice to hear from you." "Hi, I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. The holidays kept me busy. I'm calling to see if you know where Harry is. He missed a meeting today and isn't answering his phone." "No, I didn't see him last night. I haven't been there since the dance." "Oh, okay. I hope everything's all right between you two. I hope what we did didn't create any issues." "No, it was just time. I've moved most of my things out. He knew I wasn't planning to stay much longer." "Well, if you hear from him, ask him to call. Call Faith. She's looking for him." "I'm sure she is." "Okay, goodbye." Mark shared what Cindy said with Faith. She began to think about what Harry might be doing. But she brushed it off, believing he was just avoiding her. She thought he might have left town since Cindy was moving. She wondered what she would have done if Harry had shown up. She still wasn't sure. The next day, Cindy took her remaining belongings from Harry's place. She left a note and her key. No one reported Harry missing to the police. His rent was paid for 2 months. His job simply deposited his final payment into his bank account. Cindy thought maybe Harry was just upset or acting like his usual self. She left a few messages but soon gave up. Faith also left some messages. There was no reply. She couldn't figure it out. After about 45 days, she and Mark drove to a resort in the mountains. "Mark, I wonder what happened to Harry. I feel like something bad happened to him. Don't you?" "I can't say. I didn't know him like you did. If you think he's in trouble, maybe you should tell the police." "I don't think Harry would want anyone to call the police. I guess I'll never know." They enjoyed their time at the resort. Now and then, Mark felt a little guilty, but he pushed it aside. He reminded himself of the unhappy families Harry had affected, and that helped. The following year, Faith and Mark had a third child, a boy they named Harold after Faith's grandfather. That evening, Faith and Mark arrived at the hotel around 7 o'clock. They dropped off their bags in the room. The place was lively when they entered the ballroom and mingled with some of Faith's co-workers. Mark kept an eye out for Harry Baxter, knowing he would be there. He got a glass of wine for himself and one for Faith. When he returned from the bar, he saw Harry talking to a young woman. Mark walked over. "Here's your wine, Faith." "Hello, Mr. Baxter. How are you?" "I'm doing well, thanks. This lovely young lady is Cindy, my date for tonight." Mark recognized Cindy Mason, who had been spending a lot of time with Harry. In fact, he hadn't seen any other women at Harry's place for months, but he only checked in every couple of weeks. "Hello, Cindy. I'm Mark, Faith's husband. These two have worked really hard to make tonight a success. It looks like they have succeeded." "Yes, Harry has been putting in a lot of effort. Maybe too much, but the charity will benefit. Has Faith abandoned you like Harry has with me?" That was a surprising question. Mark wondered if Cindy was serious or just joking. Mark laughed. "Not truly abandoned, I hope. After tonight, I think I'll be seeing more of her." Harry chimed in as a gong sounded. "Time to sit down, I believe." Faith and Harry led the way to a table set for 8, closest to the stage. They were important guests and had special seating arrangements. They both seemed to know where to go. The table had nameplates. Harry sat between Faith and Cindy, while Mark was on Faith's other side. They took their seats, and soon the host started the event by explaining the program. Waitstaff moved around serving the guests. Several people from the charity were at the front and were served first. They would eat, listen to a short speech from the director of Homeless Help, and then dance to a live band. Around 11 o'clock, Harry would announce the Volt Award, and after that, there might be more dancing. Mark spoke to Faith for a moment, and then she turned to Harry. They talked about the details of the evening. Harry leaned in close to Faith while Mark observed. A waiter soon arrived with a salad and took their drink orders. Everyone requested wine. After the main course had been cleared, the seat next to Cindy became available. Mark got up and moved to that spot. "It seems we both might be left out here, Cindy. Faith and Harry seem a bit focused on each other. So, what's going on with you and Harry?" "Well, Mark, that's a good question. I spend a lot of time at his place, maybe 3 or 4 nights a week. That's been happening for over 6 months now. But I don't think we're meant to be long-term. Harry isn't really the settling down kind." "You're a really lovely young woman. You have many options. You could tell him to make a choice. Why continue like this?" Cindy blushed slightly. "It's simple. I enjoy being with him. Harry is just the best." Mark frowned. He glanced over at Faith, who was watching Harry as he spoke. He said, "I see. You know, Mark, I've been curious about Harry and Faith. They seem pretty close when they're together. Are you worried about it?" "Worried?" Dessert was served, and Mark returned to his seat. The band took their place on the stage and began playing a Buddy Holly song. Mark asked, "Faith, would you like to dance?" "I'd love to." They made their way to the dance floor, which was a bit far since they were at a front table. Harry and Cindy followed along. Mark was an excellent dancer. Faith was decent, but she improved while dancing with Mark. They launched into a lively jitterbug. Mark kept an eye on Harry and Cindy as they danced. Harry didn't have much style, but Cindy looked wonderful. She spun around, smiling the whole time. Another fast song came on, and Mark and Faith danced a fun boogaloo together. Harry moved about the room while Cindy swirled around him with a lively energy. Then Faith melted into Mark for a slow dance. She said, "Thanks for chatting with Cindy while Harry and I finished things up." "No problem. She's quite interesting and straightforward," he replied. "You like her, huh? She and Harry are staying here tonight," Faith noted. "So we can all enjoy some drinks and dancing," Harry said flatly. Faith missed Mark's sarcasm. "Exactly. It'll be a big party night for all of us." "We'll see how that goes," Mark replied, keeping his face neutral. He suspected that Harry, Faith, and Cindy had plans for later and decided to stay alert. After the slow dance, the 4 of them returned to their table. Harry ordered a bottle of champagne. He popped the cork and poured for everyone. Mark took a sip, while Faith quickly finished her glass, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She grabbed Harry's arm as the next song began. "Come on, Harry, let's dance!" Harry shrugged at Mark and followed Faith onto the dance floor. Mark turned to Cindy. "I think you dance really well. Maybe we should give it a shot." "I'd love that. Harry is good at many things, but not dancing," she said. Mark took her hand and they stepped out onto the floor. A fast-paced song began. Mark noticed Harry and Faith in a distant corner dancing closely together. He turned to Cindy and dipped her elegantly before spinning her around. She moved beautifully, keeping in perfect rhythm. They danced together fluidly, drawing the attention of the crowd who began to clap. Their song came to an exciting end. Meanwhile, Harry leaned closer to Faith and asked about her outfit. "Did you take my suggestion about your outfit?" "I hope so." "Yes, I did." Faith smiled confidently. Harry glanced at the crowd as they cheered for their partners. The band quickly swung into an upbeat rock song, and Mark and Cindy danced closely together. Cindy entwined herself around Mark, and he mirrored her movements. Their spirited dance caught the attention of those around them and became even more energetic, with Cindy playfully dancing around Mark. As the song ended, cheers erupted from the crowd. Mark and Cindy took a bow and made their way back to the table, with Harry and Faith following behind. Once seated, Harry exclaimed, "Wow! You two really lit up the dance floor." "I thought you were going to do it right there on the floor," I said with a laugh. "Oh, Harry," Cindy replied with a smile. "Mark and I just really connected." "I can see that," Faith chimed in, feeling a bit flustered. She thought about how she might have a chance with Harry if Mark preferred Cindy. This idea had been swirling in her mind for a few days, but she wasn't sure if Mark would be interested. Now, though, it felt possible. For a moment, she felt a twinge of jealousy, but her growing feelings for Harry quickly overshadowed that. The four of them finished a bottle of sparkling wine. Mark didn't drink much, but he was considering what the night might bring them on the 4th floor. He wondered if spending time with Cindy could make it easier for Faith to be with Harry. Just then, the host called for Harry. He had an envelope in his pocket and quickly jumped up on stage, waving it around. "And now for the big reveal. The winner of tonight's grand prize, a Chevy Volt donated by Pricer Chevy." Harry opened the envelope and read from it. "And the winner is Cheryl Wilson." A loud cheer erupted as a young blonde woman rushed to the stage. Harry handed her the key and received an enthusiastic hug in return, holding on just a moment longer than expected before giving her the car key. "The car is outside. Mr. Wright here will show you where it is. Thanks to everyone, this raffle has raised $24,000 for homeless help. Let's give a round of applause for Joe Pricer's generous donation." Once back at their group, the band began playing "Don't Be Cruel." Mark held out his hand to Faith. She paused, but then took it, and he led her onto the dance floor. They danced closely to the music. "Mark, would you like to spend the night with Cindy?" Faith asked, her voice hopeful. "I would, but I don't think it will happen. I get the feeling you and Harry had this planned," Mark said. "Well, he did bring it up, but you and Cindy, that dancing, made it feel real. We could all enjoy it together," Faith replied. As the band shifted to 16 Candles, Harry tapped Mark on the shoulder. Mark stepped away from Faith and turned to Cindy, who wrapped her arms around him. They swayed together, lost in the moment. When the song ended, Mark gave Cindy a quick, gentle kiss. They pulled back just as Harry and Faith approached. "Time to head upstairs," Harry said. The four of them walked towards the elevator, Faith linking her arm with Harry's while Cindy and Mark walked side by side. The elevator arrived, and though it was crowded, they squeezed inside. As they were pressed together, Cindy slyly reached for Mark's hand, making it hard for him to keep his composure. The elevator stopped on the 3rd floor, and 2 people at the back needed to get out, so Mark and Cindy stepped off. Mark noticed Faith leaning against Harry, looking happy. Mark and Cindy stepped into the elevator, which was slightly less crowded this time. When they reached their floor, all 4 of them got off and walked down the hallway toward their rooms. Mark reached the door to room 412, slid his card in, and held the door open. Cindy took his hand and led him inside. The door closed behind them. Faith stood there, surprised. She never thought Mark would leave her alone with Harry. Harry gently took Faith's hand and led her down the hall to room 416. Before unlocking the door, he turned to her and kissed her softly but deeply. It was a kiss that lingered, full of unspoken feelings. A passerby muttered, "Get a room?" But Harry just smiled as he opened the door. Inside the room, Harry embraced Faith. She was still taken aback by the kiss, feeling a mixture of emotions but not hesitating to follow his lead. "I've wanted to be with you since the moment I met you," she confessed. "Well, here we are," Harry replied with a smile. Harry gently guided Faith into the room. They both knew they had crossed a line, and what followed was a connection they had long denied. Instead of words, they expressed their emotions through soft embraces and meaningful glances. The night was filled with a sense of passion and intensity. They shared moments that revealed the depth of their connection, and by morning, both had experienced something unforgettable. Faith, usually composed and strong, let her guard down, allowing herself to be vulnerable in a way she hadn't in years. It was an evening of release, where both of them found something they had been searching for in each other. As dawn broke, they lay side by side, quietly reflecting on the night. Neither spoke, but the room was filled with an understanding between them, one that would stay with them long after the moment had passed. Here is the rewritten text. Some thoughts nearly made her lose focus. Back in room 412, Mark and Cindy exchanged glances when the door closed. "I didn't think you'd actually let her go with him, Mark, but I'm glad you did," Cindy said. "Me too." He pulled her close, and they shared a kiss that felt more intense. They found themselves comfortable and at ease with each other, as if something magical was happening. They didn't need many words. It felt natural, just like when they danced together. Mark felt a different connection with Cindy, who was more responsive than previous partners he had been with. They seemed to understand each other perfectly. Their time together felt like being one rather than two separate people. Moments passed as they switched between gentle and passionate moments together. Eventually, they fell asleep. Morning arrived for both rooms. Harry and Faith woke up with their backs turned to each other. Harry was the first to stir, and soon Faith followed. They got up and brushed their teeth together, with Faith using Harry's toothbrush, since hers was in the other room. It was 7:30 a.m., and they decided to go back to bed, where Harry held Faith close. Meanwhile, Mark and Cindy awakened at the same time, just gazing at one another. "Wow, I've never had a night like last night," Cindy said sincerely. "Me neither. I wonder how many times we could experience that. If it's like this all the time, it changes everything for me," Mark replied. "Well, let's find out," she said, moving closer to him. About 30 minutes later, they both got out of bed. They brushed their teeth with the same toothbrush and shared a shower, helping each other clean up with little conversation. The morning was as wonderful as the night. "Time for breakfast, but we need to do a clothing exchange for me and Faith," Cindy said. "I'll send her a message," Mark replied. He texted her that he needed Cindy's bag and would bring Faith's down in 10 minutes. Mark knocked on the door of room 416. Faith opened it wearing a hotel robe, smiling at him. He handed her the bag and took Cindy's. "How about we all meet for breakfast in 45 minutes in the lounge?" Mark suggested. Faith called out, "Harry, how about breakfast in 45 minutes with them downstairs?" "Sounds great," Harry replied, emerging from the bathroom in his boxers. Mark noticed how good he looked and briefly wondered how they spent their time together. He waved and closed the door. Faith noticed Mark looked thoughtful. She wondered if he was concerned that she might not be interested in him after spending time with Harry. But Mark's thoughts were different. He was realizing he might be in love with Cindy and felt she might feel the same way. He decided to bring it up with her before breakfast. He handed her the overnight bag and she went to the bathroom. When she came back, she was wearing shorts and a t-shirt with sandals. Mark had on similar clothes, just in different sizes. "Cindy, I hope this isn't a bad time to say something, but since we're going to have breakfast with my wife and your partner, I need to tell you. I realized last night on the dance floor that I have feelings for you. Everything since then has just made those feelings stronger. I know. I feel the same way. But I'm not sure what to do about it. I was going to keep quiet until now, but you said something first. Well, you know Faith and I need to go home. Christmas is on Tuesday and we have a busy day planned. The kids are off school and we need to pick them up today from her mom's house. Maybe we could keep this to ourselves until after Christmas. We can talk more then." "Okay, but my feelings won't change. Mine either, I think. But let's take it slow. I won't be spending Christmas with Harry. I'm going to my mom's in Orange. There will be a lot of nieces and nephews there. It should be fun for me." "Ha!" Mark laughed a little. Cindy then knelt in front of Mark and shared some playful moments with him. "When we have breakfast with your wife and her partner, I want to remember our special connection, she said with a smile. Mark felt a rush of emotions at that moment. After a little while, they cleaned up and prepared to leave. Time to go now, Mark, she said, using a tissue to dab her lips. The four of them met outside the breakfast room and got a table. The atmosphere was a bit tense at first. Mark was still thinking about what had just happened. Coffee was served, and he wondered how much they would share with each other during breakfast. Harry spoke up. I trust everyone had a good time last night. I hope there are no hard feelings. Cindy smiled and replied, Well, speaking for myself and Mark, I can definitely say we had some good feelings. They all laughed, with Faith maybe smiling a little less. The waitress came by, and they all ordered hearty breakfasts. Mark chose a big meal and found he was very hungry. Cindy's joke helped ease the tension a bit. Harry was cheerful. Mark and Cindy were still feeling excited about their special connection. However, Faith noticed how Mark and Cindy interacted and felt a little uneasy. Harry was usually good at picking up on things, but he was too caught up in his own world at that moment. Once breakfast was over, the couples headed to their cars. Harry and Cindy drove off first. Mark opened the door for Faith. She turned and gave him a quick kiss on the lips. Mark hesitated and didn't kiss her back. He gently patted her head, and she settled into her seat. Mark started driving. Harry asked Cindy how her time with Mark went, still unsure of what had happened. Mark and I got along really well. It was more than just friendship. How was it with Faith? Faith was great. She really connected with me. Honestly, we had a good time, like how we sometimes do. That's good. I hope it meant something to her. What do you mean by that, Cindy? Mark can't blame her. He chose you over his wife. Usually I might feel bad about breaking them apart, but I don't. If they separate, I'll be right there to support him. She chuckled. They have kids, Cindy. And what about us? There's no us anymore, Harry. I want to get married and have kids. That's not what you want with me or anyone else. I guess you want me to take you home then. Yes, I do. I'm sorry, Harry. Let's see what happens after the holidays. I'm not pushing you away completely. Spending time with you helps me stay balanced. But if you had the chance with Mark, would you leave me? Absolutely. Harry dropped her off and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek before heading home. He wished she had invited him to spend Christmas with her. He would need to find someone else to come with him, but he knew nobody could compare to Cindy. It left him feeling a bit down. He struggled to believe that Mark could really take her away from him, which was a blow to his pride. He had sought out other women, yet somehow Mark seemed to be winning in this situation. It was all very confusing for him. Mark and Faith returned home. They had a couple of hours before they needed to pick up the kids. Faith wanted to talk, so she brewed some coffee. Then she turned to Mark, embraced him, and tried to rekindle their connection. She wanted to feel close to him again, to ease her worries about his feelings for Cindy. But Mark wasn't in the mood. Mark, don't you want to have me back from my relationship? It could be exciting. I want to feel close to you again. No, dear. I need to think about everything that just happened. Besides, you must be feeling fulfilled for now. I'm concerned about you and Cindy. I saw how much you liked her. She was really into you, too. You never danced like that with me. If you were that worried about the dancing, you could have stopped the whole situation. But you didn't. Were you concerned about me and Cindy when Harry was with you? I doubt it. All right, but I am worried now. We just need to take our time. Let's have a nice holiday. What happened was a big shift for our marriage. Neither of us acted like faithful partners. We both broke our promises. How was your time with Harry? Was it what you expected? Be honest. Yes, it was great. He's really good at it. It felt amazing, almost like I was living a dream. What about your time with Cindy? Cindy was just as captivating and private as she was on the dance floor. We just connected. I was worried about that. We should put this talk on hold. Let's focus on making Christmas special for the family. All right, but I will bring it up later. After the party, Christmas was a joyful time for Mark, Faith, and the kids. They enjoyed the gifts, had the in-laws over for Christmas Eve dinner, and opened presents together. A large turkey was the highlight of the meal, grilled by Mark. Faith prepared mashed potatoes, a big salad with mixed greens, and a tasty green bean casserole. It was always a favorite. Cindy also enjoyed the holiday. She spent it with her brothers and sisters, their partners, and the kids. As usual, she brought a lot of joy to Christmas. She was single and had a good income from her work as a romance novelist, which she sold online. She also played poker in local tournaments, which helped boost her earnings. Cindy was 28 years old and owned an apartment near Harry's condo. She had light brownish blonde hair and was about 5 or 6 inches tall, slim but curvy. Still, these descriptions didn't capture her well. She had a lovely face and a bright smile that could light up a room. Her intelligence was part of her appeal. For several years in school and afterward, Cindy had also been a dancer, performing in local shows and commercials. Even though she stayed in shape at the gym, she decided to stop her semi-professional dancing for more stable work. Another great quality Cindy had was her confidence. Her dance experience helped her connect with Mark. There were times when she had danced with male partners, but those relationships didn't have the same spark. Then, Mark entered her life, impressing her with his skills. When she walked into his hotel room, she felt a strong connection, matching his energy. Her time with Harry had its moments too, but it lacked the caring and mutual enjoyment she felt with Mark. Thoughts of Mark made her smile. As she drove to Orange for Christmas, Cindy realized she wanted Mark to be part of her life. This was a new feeling for her. If Mark were single, she would go for it without hesitation. If he didn't have young kids, she might consider pursuing him more openly. But she didn't want to disrupt their family. Once she arrived at her brother's house, she got busy and didn't think about it much. However, every now and then her mind wandered back to Mark. Her sister-in-law, Maddie, noticed. After dinner, when the kids were busy playing with their new toys and the men were watching basketball, Maddie asked Cindy what was on her mind. "I have a tricky situation," Cindy said. She shared her thoughts with Maddie and asked her to keep it secret from her brother, Matt. "Wow, Cindy, that sounds complicated," Maddie replied. "I think I'll just wait and see what happens next. It's a bit thrilling in a strange way. I'm really curious about how it will turn out." "Right," Maddie said. "So you're just going to watch?" "Interesting," Cindy chuckled, knowing that wouldn't be the case. Harry spent Christmas feeling lonely. He could have involved someone new in his life, but he didn't want to. Instead, he felt more and more like something was missing. Eventually, he realized it was Cindy. This sudden awareness made him feel frustrated, but he wasn't sure why or who he was upset with. Feeling restless, he decided to go for a 10-mile run. When he returned home, he felt calmer and more centered. He concluded that he needed to win Cindy back from little Mark. He thought it wouldn't be too hard, but deep down, he understood how tough it might really be. He didn't think being straightforward would work. He needed to be clever and persuasive. Harry never thought about the idea of letting Cindy go if that would make her happy with Mark. He knew both of them cared about each other, but he believed their feelings might change if they faced challenges. He thought that involving Faith and Mark's kids might create pressure. If Harry got close to Faith, he could have something to offer in return. He felt that Mark had moved on from Faith to explore a new option. Mark was confused about what he wanted. He knew he cared for Cindy and wanted to keep his kids, but his feelings for Faith were unclear. The past weeks had been hard for him, especially with her strong feelings for Harry. Their connection had intensified, but instead of feeling good, he felt a bit hurt. After the Christmas guests left and the kids were asleep, he thought about everything in the shower. He decided that he wanted to pursue a relationship with Cindy and needed to learn more about her. He planned to ask her out for dinner and a talk. Faith felt uneasy as she listened to the shower. Christmas had gone well, but she sensed some distance from Mark. She hoped to understand more when he joined her in bed. Mark put on some comfortable clothes and climbed into bed. Faith turned to him and said, "We should work on our marriage, don't you think?" "No," he replied. "Why not? Are we finished? Is it too early to reconnect?" "What? Are you going to see Harry again? Are you planning to go out with Cindy?" "You didn't answer. If we were to do something now, would you be with him tomorrow?" "I enjoyed being with him, but I'm not in love with him. I love you." "Are you going to keep seeing him or not?" Faith looked away. Mark understood. "So much for love. Let me ask you this. Did we ever have a moment together as good as the one you had with Harry?" "No, well, not quite that way, but there wasn't any love in that." As soon as she said it, she regretted it, but it was true. "Faith, I plan to invite Cindy to dinner this week. I want to get to know her, not just have fun. You can have your time with Harry, but don't bring him here. If you do, things will get very difficult. He has his own place. Go there. Mark, you really don't mind if I see Harry? Faith said, her voice shaky. She realized that her freedom to date might signal trouble for their marriage. I did mind. I cared a lot. But you went ahead anyway. You would have been with him eventually, even if I hadn't met Cindy. You'll still see him for what you say is amazing fun. Why not continue? Faith felt anger rising. She thought Mark was being unfair. After all, he chose to spend time with Cindy the night of the dance. Fine, go get to know Cindy. While you're doing that, I'll be with Harry as much as I can. She turned away. Mark grabbed his pillow and moved to the couch in his office. At that moment, he felt like their marriage was over. Faith cried herself to sleep. The next morning, Mark called Cindy. She was pleased to hear from him. He asked her out for dinner on Friday. Why don't you just come to my place? She suggested. I want to take you out so we can talk. If I come to yours, we might not talk much. We don't really know each other yet. I think it's important that I learn about your job and family before we get serious. Serious, huh? She laughed. All right. Pick me up at 7? It's apartment 4 at 12 Greentree Street. What should I wear? Just dress comfortably. We'll keep it casual if that works for you. Sounds good. I'm curious, though, about how things are with you and Faith. Not great. It's all a bit tangled right now. We can talk about that, too. Yep. See you later. That morning had been tense between him and Faith, but the kids were there, so nothing was said. Faith told Mark she was going out for a while. She left before lunch, and Mark didn't ask where she was going. After she was gone, the kids were busy with their game, which held their attention but meant nothing to Mark. He called a lawyer friend from his old workplace to ask for recommendations for family law attorneys. His friend James was surprised, but quickly gave Mark 2 names. Mark called one, a woman named Mary Peters. She picked up the phone herself since she was the only one there that day. Mark made an appointment for Thursday. He wanted to learn what might happen if he and Faith separated. Faith was a lawyer, so she might already have some idea about this. Faith had plans with Harry. That's where she drove. She was upset with Mark and wanted to be with Harry again. Faith did spend time with Harry, 3 times. It was almost as good as before, just not quite. They also chatted in between their time together. Harry asked as they relaxed, "How are things with you and Mark? I hope he's not too bothered." "I don't think he cares. I think he's interested in Cindy and doesn't mind what I do." "That doesn't sound right. You've been married a long time and you have kids. One night with Cindy shouldn't change that." "I thought so when we agreed to see others, but he hasn't shown any interest in me since. He asked Cindy out for dinner. I think he really likes her. You saw how close they were." "I did see that. They seemed like a couple right from the start. If you want Mark back, we need to do something about it." "What can we do?" "We can pretend to be a couple, not just friends. You could tell Mark you want to separate and take the kids. That might make him rethink his feelings for Cindy." "That might not be so easy. If I did separate, he might get the kids since he's always been the one at home with them." "He might not realize that. Just make the threat. See how he reacts. But only if he appears serious about Cindy. If it's just a short-lived affair, well, we can use that." And that's what they decided to do. Mark met with the lawyer on Thursday afternoon. He learned that since their incomes were similar, a divorce wouldn't be too hard on him. He was also told that he had a good chance of getting custody of the kids, being the one who stays home with them. It would be joint custody, but the parent with custody would keep the house until the kids were adults, or the situation changed. He felt a little better after that. He was looking forward to his date. The date Friday arrived. Mark and Faith were still keeping their distance. He hadn't touched her since the dance. He made it clear he was looking forward to his date with Cindy. Faith, in return, didn't hide that she had been with Harry. She thought about keeping it a secret, but was angry with Mark and wanted him to feel the same way. Plus, she and Harry had their plan. Mark dressed casually for the date. He picked Cindy up at 7 o'clock. They were both a bit nervous. They sat down at a booth in the restaurant. Mark started asking Cindy about herself. She shared stories about where she grew up, her experiences as a dancer, and how she earned a living. Mark opened up to Cindy as well, telling her about his childhood and his family, including details about his marriage. As they talked, They ordered food and enjoyed their meal. Cindy was curious if Mark would think about leaving Faith for her. Mark mentioned that he had spoken to a lawyer about their situation and explained what could happen. If he and Cindy became serious, even married, it was likely that his children would live with them. Cindy felt happy with this idea. She really liked spending time with her nieces and nephews, especially when they visited her for short breaks. After dessert, Cindy invited Mark to her place and he agreed. He had already informed Faith that he might not return until the next day. When they got to Cindy's apartment, they took their time, agreeing that there was no need to hurry. They enjoyed a lovely evening together. In the morning, they both realized they wanted to be together. "Cindy, I'd like to take you and my kids out for a fun day," Mark said. "I'd love that. Where should we go, the zoo?" she suggested. "I was thinking just a picnic in the park," he replied. "That sounds great. I can make some sandwiches and cupcakes. I'll try to plan it for tomorrow. If not, next Saturday for sure." However, when Mark told Faith he wanted to take the kids on a picnic with Cindy, she became very upset. They were in their room while the children played outside. "Why would you try to take my kids away from me? I can't believe you'd do this!" Faith shouted. "Faith, I just want them to spend time with Cindy," Mark explained calmly. "Well, if you leave me for her, I'll fight for the kids. Harry and I will raise them together," she threatened. "I don't think it will work that way. Besides, you know Harry isn't the family type. You're just trying to scare me," Mark said. "I will get the kids. I know my rights," she insisted. "The law usually favors the parent who stays home with the kids. In this case, that would be me." "Oh, Mark, please don't put me through this." Faith began to cry softly. She felt lost as her plans with Harry seemed to crumble. Mark's words made her fear losing everything to Cindy. "It feels like you want to replace me with her. Can't we just go back to how things were? We were happy together. We were a family." "But Faith, you changed things when you left me for Harry. Whether there's a Cindy or not, you made your choices. I have something real with her now," Mark replied. "Just wait and see how this goes. You and her together," Faith warned. "That's what I'm trying to understand. I want to see how she fits into our lives. I don't want to take your place in the kids' lives, but it feels like you chose a different path," Mark said gently. "Maybe you'll just have to accept it." Faith turned and went upstairs. Mark felt awful. Even though she had treated him poorly, he still cared for her. But he didn't think he could stay married to her anymore. That's how things went. Cindy and the kids got along, which Mark had hoped for. He and Faith figured out a schedule to share the kids. Faith would spend some nights at Cindy's place while Cindy would stay with Mark. The kids got used to this new routine. Faith ended her relationship with Harry. She realized he wasn't what she wanted for her future. The divorce was somewhat friendly. She spent at least one day every weekend with her kids, sometimes the whole weekend. She started seeing a man at her job named Steve Mason. He was also a lawyer and single, just 2 years younger than her. She liked him, and they became close. Meanwhile, Mark married Cindy. They formed a new family, but Faith was still an important part of it. At first, Faith and Cindy were simply friendly. Faith accepted Steve's marriage proposal, and Cindy helped her plan the wedding. They grew closer, and both became pregnant in their first year of marriage. Faith had a little girl named Jeannie, and Cindy had a boy named Stuart, whom they called Bebop. The following year, Cindy had another girl named Annie. Mark and Cindy took up playing bridge competitively, and Faith and Steve would take care of the kids for the weekends when they played. One night, they were all playing cards together. Cindy always won. Faith mentioned she and Steve needed to leave early. "Why?" asked Cindy. "Well," Faith said, "we have some things to handle." Mark, curious, asked, "What things? I've noticed Steve seems a bit nervous tonight. What's going on?" Faith replied, "He has a little issue with a lipstick problem." Mark was surprised. He turned to Cindy. "You told Faith about the trick? How could you?" Cindy laughed. "We're friends now. I thought she should know about it. You're not embarrassed, are you?" "No, but Steve looks like he is." Steve turned red and all eyes were on him. "Maybe we should all take a look, Steve," Faith suggested. "We're leaving," Steve insisted, holding out his hand to Faith, who took it with a big smile. "And Harry?" Mark had a legal notice hidden in a file in his office. It was an announcement about some bank account and assets that belonged to Harry Baxter. Those accounts hadn't seen any activity in over 40 months, so the state had taken the funds. Mark had mostly forgiven Faith. She had been through a lot. They hadn't been close since that night at the party. Her life had changed dramatically. It was partly her fault. But he admired how she adapted and rebuilt her life. As for Harry, there wasn't any forgiveness for him. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.